there are two types of switches in Power Simulator. I'm going to go to the Spokane station so that we can take a better look at those. So the two types of switches in Power Simulator are load break and non-load break. Most of the switches that you'll encounter, a lot of the ones that are detailed here are breaker disconnects, for example. Those are non-load break switches. They are manually operated by substation personnel, and they have to have a very specific set of conditions in order to be operated. So either both sides of the switch have to be de-energized in order to operate it, or you are maybe just energizing a small section of bus. So the things they cannot do, they cannot energize transformers, they cannot energize lines or loads or anything like that. Anything greater than the circuit breaker itself or a small piece of bus work is more than that can handle. So another thing to note about the switches in Cascadia, we've done a lot of work to model all of the disconnect switches that you would see with circuit breakers, for example. Not every EMS system does that. Every company looks at things a little bit differently. However, again, because we're a training platform, we probably give you too much information, more than you would normally have. Again, and this is for the folks that are new to the industry or trying to break out into it. Some things to remember is Power Simulator itself allows controls that you might not have in the real world. So for example, these non-load break disconnect switches for this breaker 07FO, that's not something that you could operate, that's not something that you would have the ability to operate on your EMS SCADA system. So that's something that your substation personnel would actually have to do in the field. If you get into the switching portion of this, you'll be doing a lot of that. And there will be some distinctions. We'll go a little bit deeper about what you can actually operate in the real world, what you could operate from your SCADA system and what you can't. So to operate a switch, the switch controls are the same. You simply left click on it. You simply left click on the switch to bring that up. The other type of switch in Power Simulator is a load break switch, and a load break switch will function basically the same as a circuit breaker. So right now, if I tried to open either one of these breaker disconnects, so right now 07FO feeds the Spokane 7 load. I could open the circuit breaker if I wanted to de-energize that load, and that's fine because it's a circuit breaker, that's what it's supposed to do. However, if I try that with a switch, if I tried to open this switch, I give it an open command and I'm like, hey, it's not letting me do this. What's going on? So again, if I check my event log, I see, oh, I can't open that because the switch is under load, because that load is still energized. Okay, so that tells me that that's not a load break switch. And again, it didn't do what I told it to do, but the simulator told me why. However, a load break switch is different. You'll see it has a green designator, so T3HS is written in green instead of in yellow. That tells you that that switch has the ability to make and break load. So it can do pretty much everything a circuit breaker can do, except it does not have the ability to synchronize islands. So if I want to open the T3 high side switch, it will let me de-energize the transformer and all of its associated loads plus that capacitor. So essentially the same function. There's also a green dot. It's very small, but you can see it right there. That green dot tells you that it's a motor-operated disconnect. That doesn't have too much bearing in the simulator because the functionality is the same, but just so you're aware. So a load break switch will allow me to, like I said, it functions just the same as a circuit breaker. Now again, in reality, even load break switches have very different sets of parameters. Some are only rated to, let's say, de-energize a line. So just remember that while you have a little more freedom with what these switches can do in the simulator, it may not be the same in the real world. With my non-load break switches, in order to operate those, either both sides of the switch must be de-energized, or you have to have a parallel path or some kind of operation that is not going to, you're not making or breaking any current. It's not going to cause any kind of flow across